In 2025, Oklahoma continues to transform, but not in the way everyone expected. No longer the symbol of peaceful Middle America, the Sooner State is now known by a new name, the homeless capital of America. Population growth? Yes, but not the working people. Rather those living in makeshift tents, under bridges, or even sleeping on the cracked stone ground in the summer heat. Enough to fry an egg without a stove. This is no longer just a social issue. It is a brutal fight for survival right in the heart of America, where the poor are seen as scraps to be pushed into forgotten lands, only to be abandoned once again. In today's video, let us take you to the heart of this crisis, where people who once saw Oklahoma as the promised land now have to live in the shadows of indifference and helplessness. Oklahoma, a land once seen as a place for people to start anew, to build their dreams from scratch, has now become a hotspot for a crisis no one could have anticipated. This change did not come suddenly, but smoldered like a long-neglected wound, slowly spreading over many years. No one noticed until it was too late. And when looking back, one cannot help but wonder, how could a state with vast prairies and wide roads now become a shelter for thousands of homeless people? This is also the troubling question that many Oklahoma residents cannot help but wonder when witnessing the explosion of homelessness in recent years. The increase in the homeless population in Oklahoma is a harsh reality. In just 1 year, the number of homeless people has increased by more than 400, bringing the total to 1,838. These numbers are not just dry data, they are lives, the sad stories of people who once had stable lives. Especially among them, 17% are in a state of chronic homelessness, not just people facing temporary difficulties, but those who have sunk deep into the vicious cycle of poverty, deprivation, and lack of support. Oklahoma could still be a land of hope, but now this state is where thousands of people have to sleep in shelters, under tarps, or even on the streets, in areas where you could once imagine vibrant streets and homes lit up at night. Those streets have now become places where people no longer feel safe and no longer see a future. 62% of the homeless are living in temporary shelters, a solution that doesn't truly address the long-term problem. 24% wander the streets, and only 13% live in temporary housing, places they can only call makeshift. These people, who once had stable jobs, who once dreamed of a better life, now have to face a painfully harsh reality. Simple reasons such as the lack of affordable housing, the minimum wage not keeping pace with the cost of living, and the housing supply not meeting demand have pushed them into homelessness. The end of pandemic support has only added to their difficulties. Just like that, they not only lost their homes, but also their trust in the system they once believed in. Programs like the Encampment Rehousing Initiative can help to some extent, as 153 people have been moved into stable housing in less than 6 weeks. But when looking at the goal of 500 people by the end of 2025, one cannot help but wonder, is this temporary solution enough to make a difference? Perhaps. We have not seen the government's impotence in addressing this issue, or the shortcomings in long-term policies to prevent the recurrence of homelessness. Those numbers are just small efforts compared to the widespread nature of this crisis. So, where is Oklahoma's future headed as the number of homeless people continues to rise? And can we do anything to change this? Or will everything continue to repeat until there is nothing left to save? Will we continue to stand by? Or will we find a way to connect, help, and create a community where everyone can find a home, an opportunity to live? If you still think of Oklahoma as a land of peace, where life flows smoothly without a care, that scene is gradually being blurred by a frightening reality creeping into every corner of the streets. In northwest Oklahoma City, especially in the area around Dalese Park near Lake Hefner, homelessness is no longer an issue that can be ignored. It is a silent pandemic, spreading and affecting not only those living in homeless camps, but also the residents who are trying to maintain their peace. One of the most terrifying stories that locals recount is the campfire that almost spread into the residential area. A sudden fire broke out in the middle of the night, threatening all the nearby houses. We could see the fire blazing from afar, and the smell of smoke spread everywhere. It's hard to imagine that behind those flames are people living in conditions that couldn't be worse, a resident recounted. And that is not the only case, but just one of countless incidents causing anxiety and unrest, becoming increasingly familiar to residents in this area. The image of homeless people sitting on porches, knocking on windows, or asking for a lighter to smoke is a heartbreaking and haunting sight. These people are not simply seeking help. Sometimes they just need a spark, a little light to keep themselves alive through the freezing nights. This forces the residents living around the area to face an uncomfortable paradox. They cannot feel safe in their own homes, yet they cannot help but feel pity for those struggling with harsh conditions out there. For the people here, the feeling of anxiety is not only about safety, but also about the loss of a community, as these images become increasingly familiar, yet no one can find a way to truly help. The familiar roads, the areas that were once places for families to rest and play, have now become graveyards, with the presence of thousands of homeless people. Each step they take is a reminder that the future is not always bright, and the dream of a peaceful place is gradually becoming a distant illusion. It's hard not to feel a deep sense of helplessness when looking at this situation. The city can implement programs, but is that enough to change the reality that the entire community is facing? How can we create real change when this crisis is getting worse every day? These questions are not just about Oklahoma, they are big questions for all of us. Can we help those who are lost, or will we continue to live in insecurity without being able to change anything? Have you ever wondered where the poor go when the wealthy expand their projects? For the homeless in Norman, Oklahoma, the answer is they have nowhere to go. A group of homeless people living in the wooded area near Legacy Park, Norman, now faces a sudden and unexpected decision: to relocate immediately to make way for a new construction project. For those who have lived here for 3 years, this is not just a simple request, but a shock, a heavy blow to their already fragile lives. The announcement was made just a few hours before they had to leave, causing everything to become chaotic and uncontrollable. Stephen Lett, one of the relocation supporters, shared that at first he thought they were just being taken away to avoid the heat. But when they arrived, they realized the sad truth. Construction machinery had begun demolishing the area, and everything seemed irreparable. The people who have been here for a long time suddenly became outcasts in this society, left behind without any preparation. This construction project is not an initiative of the city of Norman, but rather a plan from private developers. The city asserts that this is private land, and the investors have followed the legal procedures correctly. But is legal compliance really enough to shield against the loss of humanity in a society where the vulnerable are being left behind? Surely, legal compliance cannot justify the lack of humanity when these people have called this place home for so many years. Many homeless people, like the Edward Hobbs family, his wife and their dog Precious, now have nowhere to go, right on the hottest day of the year.
Where are we going to go on the hottest day of the year? We had nowhere to go.
The homeless, already accustomed to hardship, now face an even worse situation. Being forced to leave a shelter they have called home for a long time, with no clear place to go. A local support organisation has temporarily rented a hotel room for the Hobbs family, but even with this assistance, their future remains uncertain. The city claims that there are other shelters, but the information is unclear, and as before, they are faced with a lack of transparency and abandonment. So who really benefits from these development projects? Whoever benefits the most from these projects It seems that the poor and the vulnerable always have to pay the highest price. Development projects not only change the landscape, but also erase communities living in poverty, pushing them out of society without any real preparation or support. The people living here did not choose a life of homelessness, but they pay the highest price for development, while those with power and money continue to consolidate their positions. Can we continue to accept this injustice, or is it time for us to take action to protect those who have no voice in this society? In the heart of the city, where houses are lit up every evening and the streets are bustling, there are hidden corners that most of us never see. Places where survival is vaguely present and where homeless people face a dark, inescapable life. Those are the dead zones in the heart of the city, areas where the homeless, those with nowhere else to go, must live in the shadows of neglect. One of the most notable wastelands is the area under the bridge or the vacant lots located in the city's hidden corners. These are places where the homeless not only find temporary shelter, but are also pushed out of all attention, without protection, without support, left only with darkness and cold. Day and night, they have to struggle for survival, with the biting cold, with torrential rains, yet they still cannot find a warm place to temporarily shelter. The image of these people, living in makeshift tents, in cardboard boxes or under tarps, is not only a heartbreaking sight, but also a reminder of the deprivation and neglect of the social system. Somewhere in these areas, they not only have to endure hunger and rain, but also face the loneliness and humiliation of not having a place to call home. These graveyards are not just places of survival, but also places where dreams are buried, where those who once had hope are now left with immense loss. For the residents living nearby, these graveyards are not only a presence of pain, but also a potential threat. The feeling of unease lingers in everyone's heart as they face the sight of homeless people struggling with life, yet they cannot do anything to help them. Those living in areas near these homeless camps are starting to feel anxious about their safety. The noises at night, the sight of homeless people lingering around their homes, knocking on windows or asking for a light, create an instability that they cannot ignore. But it's not just that. The homeless themselves also feel the humiliation and disappointment of having to live in these dead zones. I don't want to bother anyone. I just want a place to sleep for the night, a homeless person shared. But it seems that we are just invisible people, and people always think of us as a burden on society. That feeling becomes heavier and heavier as they face insurmountable difficulties, while the surrounding society only sees them as a problem to be avoided. All these stories are a testament to a heartbreaking reality. In a wealthy country like the United States, not everyone has the opportunity to live with respect and dignity. The dead zones in the heart of the city are forgotten areas where people struggle to survive under the most terrible conditions. Can we continue to look at it without doing anything? Or will we realize that these dead zones are warning signs of a flawed social system, one that accepts the neglect of the vulnerable, only to once again let them fight their own battles against fate, simply because they lack the strength to speak up? What do you think about this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments section below the video, and don't forget to like and share to raise awareness about this issue. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes, because in the next part we will explore the high cost of development. Don't take your eyes off the video, because the issue about to be revealed next not only affects the homeless but also us, as we could all be part of this story. When urban development projects began to spring up everywhere, replacing old areas with new, luxurious constructions, no one thought that behind this transformation lay a price too steep to pay. The wide roads, the high-rise apartment complexes, the luxurious shopping centres are being built. But it is the vulnerable and the homeless who are paying the price for this development. The cost is not only the loss of housing, but also the loss of trust and the sense of belonging to a community. Such projects are carried out under the names of development, modernization, economic growth. However, when looking at the reality, the question arises: who truly benefits from these projects? The poor residents, the families who have to live in makeshift conditions, not only do not benefit, but they are also pushed out, erased from the community when the lands where they have lived for a long time are transformed into luxurious constructions. They say this is development, the necessity of building a brighter future. But is this future only for those with enough money and strength, while the homeless and the poor have to endure the impacts of this change? Although these development projects may bring modernization and economic growth, we cannot overlook the high price that the vulnerable have to pay. These lands used to be homes, communities of the forgotten people. Development cannot only serve those with enough money and power, but must ensure that no one is left behind, especially those without shelter. This reveals a heartbreaking reality. The development of real estate projects and prosperous areas is not an equitable development for everyone. It is a development that only serves a segment of people who can afford it, while the poor and the marginalized are left behind, pushed to the fringes of society. These projects not only change the landscape, but also erase long-existing communities, places where people have formed bonds and called home. This development, instead of benefiting everyone, is causing division and injustice, making it even harder for the poor. So, is this development really worth the price we have to pay? Can we continue to look at this change without feeling a deep sense of injustice? Or will we start questioning the price of development, and whether that price is too high for those who have nothing but hope and faith in a fair society? Oklahoma, a city once symbolizing freedom and multiculturalism, has now become an area shrouded in anxiety and insecurity. The homelessness situation is becoming increasingly severe, and the future of this city, like some other areas in Oklahoma, seems to be growing more and more bleak. Although there have been notable efforts to address the issue, the vision of a bright future for Oklahoma seems to be shrouded in an impenetrable fog. When people talk about Oklahoma, what comes to mind is no longer the bustling streets, the evenings illuminated by bright lights. Instead, the image of deserted streets comes to mind, with makeshift tents set up at every corner, where homeless people struggle to survive in the winter cold or under the scorching summer sun. This city is facing a crisis that those directly involved cannot solve, and those on the outside can only watch. The statistics, though horrifying, still cannot fully capture the pain that the homeless endure. Oklahoma is not the only place facing this issue, but the question is the city really doing enough to improve the situation? Programs and initiatives like the Key to Home Partnership can provide some assistance, but can they truly change the landscape? The answer is still unclear. Although the authorities have committed to addressing the issue within 2 years, at the current pace, everything seems too slow compared to the rapid increase in homelessness. The future of the homeless in Oklahoma seems to be being erased. Children living in poverty without a safe place to shelter will grow up with wounds that cannot be healed. They will have to face unimaginable hardships, and the opportunities that a child deserves will continue to be taken away. The cost of delaying the resolution of the homelessness issue is not only the loss of human lives, but also the loss of a part of the future. The future of Oklahoma, like that of many other cities, remains an unanswered question. The homeless continue to live in impoverished conditions, while the initiatives remain only temporary solutions. Can we change this? Or will we continue to witness roads devoid of hope, barren lands without shelter, and lives that can never escape the cycle of poverty? The future of America, a nation once considered the land of dreams, is now facing a harsh reality that cannot be ignored. Homelessness is surging, not just in Oklahoma, but nationwide. While major cities and thriving centers are still considered symbols of prosperity and opportunity, a segment of the population is increasingly being left behind, pushed to the margins, and forced to struggle with a dark, inescapable life. The rise of dead zones in the city is becoming a clear sign of losing control. The old areas, vacant lots, and underpasses have become shelters for thousands of homeless people, while the local authorities continue to develop luxury projects and new shopping centres, unable to address the issue of the poor being left behind. The homeless not only lack housing, but they also lack attention from the social system and the authorities. We cannot overlook the warnings about the increasingly severe social divide. The homeless are not just the unemployed or those without homes, but they also represent a segment of society that has been forgotten, left behind by the system for decades. The homeless are victims of the shortage of affordable housing, the difficulty in accessing support services, and the injustice in the distribution of resources and opportunities. The current support policies are merely temporary solutions, lacking synchronization and effectiveness, making it impossible to address this issue at its root. The future of homeless families is becoming a worrying issue. Images of parents living in cars with their children are no longer rare. Thousands of families are facing the threat of losing their homes and cannot access the necessary support services. This is not just an issue for individuals, but for the entire working and middle class, those who are struggling in an economy that no longer provides them with stability. What will the future of this country be like without a long-term strategy to address the issue of homelessness? Can we continue to leave the vulnerable behind as society progresses? Or is it time for us to reassess and take action so that no one has to live in the shadow of neglect? This question is not only for the government or social organizations, but for all of us. Can we build a fairer society where no one is pushed to the margins? When we look at the exploding homelessness situation in Oklahoma, the question is not just about the numbers, but about us, the people living in an increasingly divided society. Although development projects continue to spring up, the homeless are still left behind, with no choice but to live in the shadows of a system lacking genuine support. The future of Oklahoma, and perhaps the entire United States, is being written by how we treat these vulnerable individuals. Will we continue to ignore them, or will we find ways to help, so that no one has to live in the graveyards of neglect? This question is not only about Oklahoma, but also about us, in the communities we live in. What do you think about the homelessness crisis in Oklahoma? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and stay updated with our latest videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. This video is based on reports, data, and information publicly released from press sources, non-governmental organizations, and statistical data from state authorities. All opinions, analyses, and arguments in the video are intended for educational purposes, social critique, and raising community awareness, not for criticizing any specific individual, organization, or government. We respect all differing viewpoints and encourage viewers to comment in a civilized and responsible manner.